Hello, everyone. Welcome to xMatters Demo Days. Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you're joining us from. As the VP for EMEA here at xMatters, I'm excited today to be talking to you about one of the customers that we work with, Linaro. You'll hear about how they're achieving success with xMatters. So a couple of housekeeping things before we kick off. Firstly, don't forget we have the chat area open for you to post comments or questions throughout today's webinar. This session is intended for xMatters customers or prospects. It is subject to all of our published fair use policies and other terms and conditions. And if you'd like to find out more about that, you can visit xmatters.com/policy. I'm your host today, Laura Meadows, and joining me is Director of Information Services, Philip Colmer. Philip has over 30 years experience working with IT infrastructure of various sizes and complexities. More recently, he's focused on automation as much as possible to ensure standardization and consistent responses. Philip joins us from Linaro, an organization which leads collaboration in the ARM ecosystem and helps companies work with the latest open source technology. We're also joined by Stephen Walters, a solution architect on the sales engineering team here at xMatters EMEA. Stephen's also a DevOps Institute ambassador and helps many of our organizations of all sizes through a variety of digital transformation journeys. So firstly, Philip, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. To start us off, can you talk to us a little bit more about Linaro, who you are, what you do, and so on?
Yes, thank you. Linaro was formed over 10 years ago to help member companies collaborate and deliver results on the latest open source technology to get the best out of ARM designed silicon. Between company employees and staff on loan from the member companies, we have over 250 engineers working on more than 70 open source projects, developing and optimizing software and tools, ensuring smooth product rollouts, and reducing maintenance costs.
Perfect.
Work happens across a wide range of technologies, including artificial intelligence, automotive, data center and cloud, edge and fog computing, high-performance computing, IoT, and embedded and mobile. In my role as Director of Information Services, I'm responsible for ensuring that core IT services meets the needs of the company, as well as managing our infrastructure on Amazon Web Services. In addition to providing day-to-day support to our staff and external partners, we are always looking for ways to improve the services, as well as the way we deliver, manage, and maintain them.
Wonderful. Thanks, Philip. So before we jump into talk about your xMatters journey, can you start by telling us a little bit about the problems that you were facing that led you to explore a platform in the first place?
Of course. Monitoring and managing our infrastructure has been something of a learning curve for us. We started out using Zabbix, running on a physical server outside of AWS, so that if AWS failed, we'd be able to detect the failure still. However, it didn't integrate with our online status dashboard, which therefore always showed green unless we manually updated it. Furthermore, we were getting too many false alerts. We were also using Zabbix to handle a special email address that would create critical support tickets and send us text messages until someone acknowledged them. But it was not easy to configure Zabbix when one of us was on holiday. Ultimately, it was just too reactive and we needed to do something to improve it.
Great, thank you. One of the things, Philip, we've talked about before, I absolutely love the journey that Linaro had with xMatters. You were one of our first customers in EMEA to take this journey, and reactive responses to problems occurring in systems is a fairly typical pain that most of our customers look to use xMatters to help solve. But you actually started off on our free tier of the product. So besides it being free, what attracted you to use xMatters?
For a small team like ours, the free tier for xMatters was perfect. There were virtually no limitations when compared with the paid plans, certainly none that we needed to be concerned about during the initial evaluation and adoption phases. Of particular appeal in xMatters was Flow Designer. I'd not come across another platform that was so flexible in terms of not just putting steps together to tell xMatters how to treat the various inputs, but also in terms of being able to write your own custom steps in JavaScript. That for me made Flow Designer really powerful. It meant that I could put flows together that react, notify, and when desirable, take appropriate action automatically. Furthermore, even as a non-paying user of the system, the support I got not just from the community forums, but also the xMatters support team was just brilliant.
Wonderful, thanks. Always good to hear that. So you've mentioned about taking actions in your environment. So I'm guessing you've set up an xMatters integration or two.
Yes. So we've completely replaced Zabbix with AWS Cloud Watch to monitor our infrastructure. xMatters provides a great Cloud Watch integration, which makes it really straightforward to have Cloud Watch trigger an alarm when appropriate, which in turn triggers a flow in xMatters. The flow will then alert the IT staff who are available. We've also replaced our critical email flow, again using xMatters instead of Zabbix. This allows us to easily handle absences and only alert the correct IT staff. The email trigger also integrates with Jira to create the service desk ticket for the customer. Acknowledging the alert in the xMatters app causes the ticket to then be assigned automatically. These changes have allowed us to benefit from rota scheduling in xMatters, allowing individuals to mark themselves as absent when appropriate.
Great. So the exciting bit coming up. So the AWS Cloud Watch integration is one that really caught our attention. You've taken much further than beyond the core kind of find and inform use case that many customers use for that integration. So I'd love it if you could tell us a bit more about that, please.
Of course. So having become a little bit more familiar with the Flow Designer, I wanted to really stretch myself by implementing some automation that I have been wanting for years, well, certainly years of using Amazon. Automatic remediation of a server running low on disk space. AWS makes it fairly straightforward to deal with this manually, but it's a sequence of steps, and that lends itself to automation, resulting in fewer headaches for staff and quicker resolution times. So we monitor the free space on all of the volumes for our production systems. If any of them reach a defined threshold, CloudWatch triggers an alarm, which triggers the xMatters flow. The flow then goes through a series of steps to resize the affected disk volume and then instructs the operating system on the affected system to perform an OS level resize. Regardless of whether or not the flow succeeds, finally, we get a message posted in Google Chat, which is often a pleasant surprise as we now aren't manually monitoring the servers, so it's reassuring to see that the flow in xMatters has taken care of it for us.
Perfect. And I absolutely love that story because that automated remediation is a huge step and certainly a vision that many of our customers are looking at as they undergo their digital transformation. What sort of pains do you feel that's alleviated for you?
So I mentioned that we're monitoring the free space on production systems. Recently, a colleague contacted me about a test server that at 9:40 p.m. my time had stopped working. As it was a test server, I didn't have any monitoring and I wasn't too fussed about dealing with the test server during my evening. However, he said that an external customer needed to use it for some testing. So in true IT fashion, I suggested that he rebooted the server to try and fix the problem. However, that didn't solve anything. Given the late hour, I was reluctant to do anything until the start of my working day, but I understood the importance of the customer, even though it was a test system. So I gave in, got my laptop, turned it on, and logged onto the server. My initial challenge was remembering how the software on this server worked, as I couldn't find anything in the usual places. I logged on to the production version of the server and it looked the same. I still couldn't find anything. I then remembered everything was running in a Docker container. So I went back to the test server, checked Docker, and it wasn't running. I tried to start Docker and that failed due to a lack of disk space. I got onto the AWS web-based console, found the server, expanded the disk volume, and followed the instructions provided by Amazon to then instruct the OS to expand the filing system. Thankfully, the steps don't take too long, and when done, I managed to reboot the server to then ensure a clean start. All told, from first being contacted to the server up and running took 40 minutes. So if we'd been monitoring the server but sending notifications by email, it still would have probably taken 40 minutes because I tend not to check work email at night, so I wouldn't have known there was a problem. If we'd been monitoring the server and sending notifications by xMatters, my wife might have been a bit upset if I'd been woken up in the night, okay, not 9:40, but to expand a disk volume on a test server. Of course, if I'd been monitoring test servers and using the custom xMatters flow to grow the volume, there would have been zero downtime, zero interruptions to me, and just a single chat message to let the team know what had happened.
Wonderful. Thanks, Philip. I know I've heard that story a few times, but I really enjoy it. It really shows the power of what you've achieved with those extra steps in xMatters. So whilst it's not great that you had to work in the evening, it's definitely a great example. I'm certainly keen to learn a little bit more about your next steps. But before that, let's transition over to Stephen to show us an example of automated remediation with xMatters. Stephen, over to you.
Thanks, Laura. Philip and the Linaro team have taken monitoring and alerting to the next level, something we at xMatters love to see. So in today's demo, we're going to show you a version of a demo you may have seen before using a variety of tools. First of all, let me just share my screen and I'll show you Flow Designer. If this is your first time seeing Flow Designer, I highly recommend checking out the Flow Designer overview on your YouTube channel. It's linked in the chat area now. Here we have a flow which is triggered via a signal received from our monitoring tool, Dynatrace. This flow then has a switch step, which is like a logic gate to determine what kind of signal is being received before automatically attempting a service restart using Ansible and posting the result into a Slack channel. So in just 2 steps, xMatters can receive a signal, take an action to correct it, and then log in another tool. From there, the flow can take further action depending on the results of the Ansible playbook execution. For example, if the service restarts successfully, you may create a Jira ticket purely for logging purposes. But if the restart is unsuccessful, you may then need to start taking more actions and getting a team involved for human intervention. Just like Philip has described, there's only so much machines can do for us, but Flow Designer aims to alleviate much of the pain of being woken up at 2 a.m. when something has gone wrong. Looking along this default path, we can see xMatters not only logs a Jira ticket with the issue and posts the information to Slack and MS Teams. It then goes off to gather additional information. This is what we call enrichment, so that when we deliver an alert to the on-call resource, they not only have the Dynatrace signal, but details of what corrective action has been taken and what changes have recently been made. So how does this look in practice? I've just reawakened my mobile phone and I'll just show you this here. Here we see that Dynatrace signal. It has the core alert information, as we would expect. But as we scroll down, you can see the automated remediation execution results. And as that Ansible restart playbook has failed, we've therefore been sent this notification. Those enrichment steps are here also. In this case, we're pulling in the latest code and build repository results, along with a look at another tool, RabbitMQ, to see if there's impact elsewhere. Of course, these are good indicators, as problems often occur when something has changed. So this is why we're also looking into our ITSM platform, ServiceNow, to pull in active change results as well, the various change requests that we have. So armed with this information, an on-call resource can now take further action. That might be to deploy an update. It might be just a quick code fix. So being able to initiate that command from a notification saves valuable time. Similarly, the problem may actually be more severe and require us to begin an incident response process. If I switch back to the flow canvas, you can see this create alert step. You see there all of the response options that you saw within the mobile app. Those responses can have actions linked to them. For example, we can hit request incident to log a ticket on our ITSM platform. or that deploy update response to trigger our deployment tools build processes. Of course, you don't need to go through this triage step. You can build your flow to automate based on things like signal criticality or service name. If we'd press that request incident response, xMatters would take the Dynatrace signal and create a ticket on my ITSM platform, ServiceNow. The workflow for that tool may be owned by another team, perhaps operations or major incident management. So it could have actions to notify stakeholders, update a public-facing status page, post into chat tools, as well as notify on-call resolvers. So you've seen how xMatters can take a signal from a tool indicating a problem, configure Flow Designer to automate key actions such as running playbooks, before then sending enriched notifications to on-call resources when human intervention is required. Let's pass back to Laura and Philip.
Thanks, Stephen, for the tour of some of xMatters' core functionality, which has helped the Linaro team support their digital services and move towards a self-healing operation. Philip, you mentioned in your last example how the pain of not having full monitoring coverage, even on test systems, led you to expand your use of xMatters. What other use cases have you set up or looking to explore with us in the future?
So I mentioned earlier that when we were using Zabbix, it wasn't integrating with our online dashboard. I've extended the Cloud Watch flow so that that functionality is now there. The flow actually checks with the dashboard system first to see if the reported system is currently in maintenance as far as the dashboard is concerned. If it is, nothing else happens, nothing is reported. However, if the system isn't in maintenance, a dashboard incident is created, which can then notify subscribers to the dashboard. Furthermore, when the CloudWatch alarm clears, the status on the dashboard is updated again to reflect the fact that the system is running, but is still being monitored. If after a couple of days we've had no further problems, we manually close out the incident on the dashboard.
Perfect, thank you. And I mentioned earlier, but one of the things that most excited us here at xMatters was when you went through our swipe to buy journey and purchased licenses within the product to upgrade from the free tier. So for those attendees that might be considering doing the same, what drove you to do so, and how did you find the experience of upgrading?
So our decision to upgrade was a simple one. We had more people who wanted to use xMatters. I mentioned earlier that there were very few limits. I think for the free plan, it's 10 agents, and we needed to grow beyond that. By spending time within IT using it and proving the value of it, it became easy to recommend it to other teams in Linaro when they need a solution to managing a similar environment, namely CloudWatch alarms, staff in an on-call rota, and dashboard integration. Their needs were slightly more complex than mine, particularly because the support team is bigger and therefore the on-call rota is more complicated, but it was nothing that xMatters couldn't handle. The experience of upgrading was very straightforward and handled directly within the xMatters web interface itself.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you so much, Philip, for sharing your experiences with us today. Let's quickly recap on today's content, and then we'll dive over to the Q&A. So like many customers, Linaro have integrated xMatters to a number of tools and gone further to switch from a reactive to a proactive approach to incidents. This has led to a reduction in the triage and incident call-out response time, needing to alert on-call resources less by automating standard remediation approaches, delivering enriched content notifications to support triage efforts. So again, Philip, thanks very much. Let's, if you can keep with us for a few more moments, let's jump over and have a look in the question area. And for those of you attending online, please do pop your questions in the Q&A area and we'll get through those as we go. So let's have a look here. Okay, so first question, you mentioned you have xMatters scaling up a disk when it runs out of space in AWS. Why did you not do that through a Lambda function?
So that's a good question. We could use Lambda, and other people have blogged and written about using Lambda. There were a couple of reasons why. I mean, xMatters was a little harder to get to that point partly because it doesn't have any native capability for using the Amazon API infrastructure. But I felt that there would be two benefits really. One is that everything would be in one place. So if any errors happened, it would be easier to handle within Flow Designer. And the second benefit was I've now got a framework that allows me to call any Amazon API. So I can do other flows that do other things now. Lambda would have perhaps been easier and quicker, but it might have meant extra emails or SNS alerts. In other words, it wouldn't have all been in the one part of AWS. There would have been extra pieces.
Great, thank you. Hopefully that answered the question for everyone. Short one next. Can we see the flow used by Linaro?
Sure. I've actually written a blog posting about how it hangs together, and there's a GitHub repo of the steps that are used in the flow, and I believe those links are being posted to chat.
Perfect. Okay, so that seems to be the questions that have come in. I guess one extra one from me, Philip, and we've covered it to some degree, but for those people online that are maybe not sure about taking their first xMatters step, how easy did you find it when you first kind of went to the website and started the journey? Is there any advice you could give others thinking of doing the same?
Start simple. That's the key. Don't try and do everything at once. The great thing about xMatters is there's a lot of built workflows that you can easily install. I mean, that was one of the things about the Cloud Watch workflow. It's a few clicks, it's installed, and then you've got step-by-step instructions on how to integrate it with CloudWatch, how to set an alarm up, things like that. So there's a lot of packaged flows to help you get going.
Great, thank you. And I guess a question for Monday, have your team gone into xMatters and automated absolutely everything so that they can all enjoy their full day hangover?
No, not at all.
Are you going to watch for that?
Well, I can hold the fort. I don't drink, so I'm okay if they don't turn up.
You might still have no throat though from all the cheering, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, that concludes the questions that have come in. We've had some thank yous for the links, but I can't see any extra Q&A. So we'll give everyone a little bit of time back. Let me just finish up with letting you know how you can find more. So I think Belinda's going to pop a couple of links up on our screen for us. But if you liked what you saw today, you can try it yourself with xMatters free, as we've talked about. You can sign up today by going to xmatters.com/sign up. Or if you'd like to receive a personal demo from one of our experts, you can do so at xmatters.com/demo. If you found this webinar interested, this is a series that we do really regularly. It's xmatters.com/demo days, exactly as we've done today, designed to be short bites to help you really get some basic understanding of how other customers use xMatters. We can talk about it, Stephen and I and the rest of the team here, till the cows come home, but it's always much nicer when it comes from a live customer using us in a live way. We've had one more question in, actually just jump into the chat for saying what industry would most benefit from xMatters. So I guess I'll take that one. So I've been with xMatters for 8 years now. I've seen a range of customers use us. Obviously, we've talked today about Linaro and where they work. Typically, we see a lot of our business come from the financial sector. We find that that's a sector that heavily monitors the cost of downtime, and also is a sector which is doing huge amounts of digital transformation. Where lots of customers are taking their xMatters usage these days is not so much simply incident handling, it's more incident prevention, as we talked about. So how can I find an issue before it becomes an incident? And that tends to be very popular in our banking. But as far as industries go, I mean, we have such a range. We've got many of the telcos, we've got many of the media companies, excuse me, we work with legal companies. I mean, honestly, I struggle to think of an industry that isn't using us in some way. In fact, one of our customers actually has us integrated to their customer flow, which allows farmers to call in when their farming equipment is failing, and actually an xMatters flow triggers getting someone to that farm to fix a tractor of kind. So there are so many weird and wonderful ways that our clients use us. What I would encourage is that every customer and every company should be on a digital transformation journey. That should have been the case 2 years ago. COVID has certainly accelerated that for many people. But if you're a company that is reliant on anything but a simple high street interaction in a store, then xMatters can benefit you. What you should think about is the cost of downtime saved, but actually the cost of the people doing the work. Wouldn't you rather your people were doing work that was absolutely valuable to driving your innovation and driving your business forward than constantly remediating issues? So hopefully that answered your question, but my answer would be I've yet to find an industry that doesn't benefit. It's more around the use case and how you use this. So hopefully that was useful. Again, I'm Laura Meadows. You're welcome to add me on LinkedIn, connect with me. I'll happily, if you're in EMEA, set you up with one of our team, or if you're in the US or Asia Pac, certainly route you to my peers who will be able to also allow you one of their team to work with. So thanks again for your time. Belinda's just sharing for us here our social feed. So we are, of course, on all the channels you would expect, the Facebooks, the LinkedIns, and the Twitter. So do come and find us. Do engage with us. And I hope, if nothing else, what you took away from today was that Philip has self-served a lot of this. One of the things I loved, Philip, about what you said was that the support from xMatters was fantastic, even when you weren't actually paying us a penny. And that for me has always been an important part of the xMatters culture and why I joined originally, because for us, it doesn't matter whether it's a free client or a multi-million-pound client. What we care about is all of our customers having a wonderful experience. So I'm so glad that's the experience that you've had. And I'm so thankful that you've taken the time to share that with our audience today. Thank you. And thank you, Stephen.